Hey, what's up, podcast family? This week's podcast guest is Hanif Joshaghani. He's a high energy serial entrepreneur. He has a broad range of experience in many industries and has raised about $100 million across the 4 companies he's founded, with several exits up to date. Hanif is also passionate about helping other entrepreneurs as an active angel investor in several technology companies. On the podcast, we talk about business growth, Calgary post-COVID, and much, much more. His story from a 13-year-old immigrant refugee to now his company Symend having the largest capital raises in Western Canada history is a crazy one. Remember to rate and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. You get unique, awesome local leaders and entrepreneur stories each week, jam-packed with their insights. Leave me feedback at joe@codessa.io on some of the stories or questions you want to hear, and I read them all, so please send me them. And now to the podcast. Hope you guys enjoy. Hi, Amy.
Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Not bad. Yeah, before we jump into the podcast, I want to congratulate you and the Symend team for raising one of the largest rounds in Alberta in recent history. I think that's great work you guys are doing over there.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Yeah, no, it came together. It was funny. We started the process to raise money before COVID really spiked, but we ended up having to do most of the due diligence and getting it closed post, the whole company going remote and things really going to another level. So it was a very interesting process, and I'm probably one I'm going to tell my kids about for sure.
I'm sure. Well, that's great. Shows that Calgary has a vibrant tech ecosystem here. So yeah, let's jump right into the podcast. Tell us a little bit about your background, your history, your origin story.
Sure. It just really briefly touching, and it'll be relevant for some end. I immigrated to Canada when I was quite young, like 13, 14 years old, and my family actually escaped. It was more of an escape situation, and we landed as refugees, and all the things that are associated to that, and we had no money, and we built up from scratch, and there were a lot of hard times in those early days, and over time, I did well in school. Ended up at a full scholarship at University of Chicago, and did a couple of other degrees, all on full scholarships after that. Ended up doing a bunch of work. I was economics and math were really my thing, so I ended up working in capital markets in a variety of capacities. Fixed income derivatives, structured products, Eurodollar options trading down in Chicago, working in mergers and acquisitions for companies like RBC and TD, and investment banking for those companies. Ended up being a corporate finance manager for a company that I'd helped IPO, which was Capital Power, which we spun out of EPCOR, which is an Alberta company. It was like a $500 million IPO. Went to join them, part of the corporate finance team that post IPO we helped raise, $2 billion, did $2 billion in asset acquisitions. And then I don't know, like along the way, as I learned more and more about business, I kind of wanted to kind of do it for myself. After Capital Power, really got into entrepreneurship. My first business was a boutique financial advisory firm, and then after we banked some fees, we started to take that money and parlay it into businesses that we were advising, and that was my taste of actually being an entrepreneur myself with my own capital at risk. Those businesses, a couple of those ventures went well, some of them didn't, and along the way I learned a lot. My first real software company was a company called ASPIS, Advanced Spill Prevention Systems, which was part software, part satellites, part data around oil spill prevention. That went really, really well. We had a decent exit there. We went and started a company called Invistaware, which we then changed the name to Aimsio, me and a couple of really good friends, like family friends. And Aimsio went in a really good direction. It was mostly bootstrapped in our own money. We did a raise, which was part chips off the table, part growth. And after that, my practically he's my cousin Ash. He took over the lead CEO role there at Aimsio. I'm still a big shareholder there, but I decided to branch out and try something where it was my idea and it wasn't opportunistic. It was a passion project where I was like, look, this is something I want to do from scratch on my own, and really, went to Tiffany, who I'd known for a long time, and she brought in her kind of nudging and marketing and background, and we kind of went after it. And the idea of Symend was really the genesis of it was informed by my childhood and the collection calls and some of those experiences that I'd had when I was younger, and a desire to get into a business that I'd firsthand had some pain around, and trying to do some social good. And the idea was, hey, if we can do a better job in connecting big companies to consumers and improving that layer of engagement, then we can ensure less people fall through the cracks and less people get their accounts suspended and their credit screwed up and all those kinds of things that have happened to me. And so, it was one of these things where I was like, I think I have an opportunity here to build a really big business, but also do some social good along the way. And that's kind of what Symend is all about.
Wow. Seems like you have your hands in a lot of different interesting projects. What would you say is something you'd want to have known when you first began your entrepreneurial path?
It's a good question. I'm actually an active angel investor now. I'm an advisor and an investor to a bunch of other companies in the tech ecosystem in Canada, especially in Alberta. And, looking at my own career and then looking at the advice that I give some of these other companies, um, a lot of it is, you're invariably going to make mistakes along the way. Some of them are really hard to undo, so if you're not a serial entrepreneur and you haven't built some scar tissue with some of these mission critical decisions, like at an early stage, go and really be deliberate about what are the skill sets that I need to be successful, what don't I have, and lay in a strong foundation of advisors and mentors that can help bridge those gaps for you, and then be unapologetic about calling on those people like a dialer friend, in various situations. Too many mistakes that I made were avoidable if I had just asked the extra question or thought about it and had taken an extra step and did a little bit more due diligence instead of just going with the first thing that I thought about. So be very, very diligent, especially if it's your first time, because some of the mistakes are really difficult to unpack and undo. And the other thing I'd say is make sure before you raise too much money and scale too much and get ahead of your skis, really make sure that you're going problem first, and you've identified a problem, you've identified whether there's something that's viable from a financial standpoint and desirable from a purchasing standpoint that's going to solve that problem, and go problem first, and then think about how to solve it, and then think about whether it can be sold, and then start to make heavy investments. Too many times people come up with the solution first instead of spending too much time on the problem, and they end up with a product, and now they have to pivot with a product, which is a lot harder and more expensive to do than to pivot with an idea. And I see that a lot. So going problem first and really understanding the problem, unpacking it, and with a pen and paper, really conceptualizing a solution and validating that if it was sold, it would work, and slowly getting in there and identifying things that you need to change and iterate on. That would be the way to go. A lot of the pain that I see early entrepreneurs may go through is related to they invested too much in technology before really understanding the problem. So then they end up with a technology that doesn't quite work, and they have to keep iterating on it.
That's great advice. Speaking of problems and challenges, for you personally, has there been a big failure or challenge that you have to pivot from or learn from?
In Symend, yeah, honestly, like, we had a first big customer that came in the door. We did a free POC and we started to staff up on kind of assuming that it was going to be successful. And we didn't hire based on real needs. We hired ahead of needs, like based on expected needs. And then the thing took longer and we lost it for a second before regaining it. And I had to cut a third of the staff overnight. And just to be able to get us enough runway so that we could make sure we get that customer back, we land more customers, things like that. I got ahead of my skis on hiring, and then I didn't leave myself a lot of room for mistakes. And so when bad thing happened, I didn't have the maneuverability to react to it, so I had to cut a lot of people. And it was a painful time, but for at least for us, being decisive at that moment and not lingering is what saved us and allowed us to be in the position we are today. So, two big lessons. One was don't get ahead of yourself, right? And the other one was, if you do get ahead of you're always going to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to live with them. You got to be decisive once you've identified a problem.
What would you say is a unique skill that you have that made you pivot and learn from your mistakes so quickly?
Um, Humility. As much as most people who know me think that I do have a lot of confidence bordering on ego. Like the one thing I think that I've learned is mission critical to really innovating and disrupting rather than doing something that's been tried and true is having the humility to know that you're not good at this stuff. Like you have to ask a lot, like being good at listening, being good at asking a lot of questions, and being good at synthesizing a lot of opinions and data points and then making decisions quickly. And then once you made a decision, observing the data and not being very unemotional about whether it's working or not. And if it's not working, then moving on to the next thing and pivoting. Like the ability to synthesize and iterate is key because and being kind of honest with yourself that you're at best average at everything and therefore you have to be a student of the game all the time is the key. And I think anyone that goes in there thinking that they're very very good, they immediately hit big issues and big failures and things like that. Like, you know, having the humility to be a student of the game opens up a lot of possibilities.
Right, absolutely. I think having that self awareness too helps with building that humility as well. Just to know what you're good at, what you suck at, and kind of
Exactly,
currently.
exactly,
Exactly.
exactly.
So, for you personally, what's been sort of the best resources that's helped you along the way?
Um, Different resources at different stages. I mean, a really, really competent management team over time and hiring uh, one of the things that people tend to do is they view hiring costs and stuff like that very in a very linear way. I If I hire this person at 80 grand a year, that's the answer. Versus this other guy is 120 a year, and I can't afford that. Well, if the junior guy doesn't have the experience and you're going to have to micromanage him, you really haven't expanded your range. And then all of a sudden, it's going to cost you like tenfold down the line. So, one of the things that really has helped our company become successful is and whenever we moved away from that discipline, we've ended up paying for it, is hiring really, really good senior people one level below you that make with the goal of me replacing yourself. It's like, how can I hire a sales guy where I don't need to sell anymore? How can I hire a product guy where he's going to learn the product, get me out of his way, and just get feedback from time to time? He's better at product than I am. So how can I level up and always aim high at every role? And that's really what enables scalability in an organization. And every time we've moved away from that ethos, we've ended up paying for it.
What you're saying is hired to one day maybe replace you essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Like the ideal goal of a CEO is it'll never happen, but that kind of euphoric future state is you've hired people who are so good that you can sip martinis on a beach somewhere and the company keeps growing, right? That's now it'll never happen, but that's what you should be driving towards. And if that informs all your decisions, then you're going to start to hire some really good people that can kind of, have a 1 plus 1 equals 3 impact on your business.
So stepping back a little bit, have you read anything recently or listened to anything recently that's really inspired you?
Yeah, there's a lot of things actually. I have a list of books that I'm reading all the time. There's one book I keep reading, and probably the only book that I keep reading, because depending on what I'm dealing with and what stage we're at in the business, the things that I gravitate towards, the lessons, they have new meaning over time. So there were parts of the book that like meant nothing to me 2 years ago, and now when I go back and I read those sections, I'm like, yes, please tell me more. Is a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And it's, I think it was Horowitz that wrote it. And it was during his SoundCloud and all like the businesses that he built and he exited, and he went through the whole, .com bubble and everything else. And he ended up exiting it for $1 billion, and but he went through some impossible situations and firing, hiring, lessons about training, onboarding, lessons about the difficult conversations, what to look for in a product manager, how you should evaluate sales. Like there's just so much good anecdotal information in there about how to be a successful CEO. So I would highly recommend it to anyone, and I would recommend going back to it as a source of guidance, as your career evolves and what the company needs from you evolves.
So walk me through fintech industry. So what's one common myth about fintech, or it could even be entrepreneurship, that you wish would be debunked?
Um, that being a serial entrepreneur really like guarantees future success in some way is crazy. It doesn't get easier over time. Every situation is unique. And the other one is like just the word fintech. Like it's too broad. Like at the end of the day, the underpinning of every, like you could call us an engagement platform, you could call us fintech, you could call us a whole bunch of different things. Like you could effectively make the argument that with currency embedded into Facebook or Twitter, or like every business, digital enablement business, has some sort of financial underpinning. So and the main industry that they address is really the way I think about these things, and so that's one thing that I would say. The other thing is that somehow fintech is replacing banking or traditional banking and things like that. I think it's certainly democratizing finance, and I think it's expanding the purview of finance. But I think it's additive to traditional banking. I think, uh, it's like basically, you had a car and now you're getting every option on it. What we're seeing with banks and with telcos and with all these big enterprise companies that we work with is the whether you call it fintech or something else, the repeated success of these organizations is making older legacy businesses better, and making them more agile and making them want to innovate more and partner more and acquire more. So I think that would be the big thing that I would kind of speak to is I actually think almost every startup now is in some way a fintech. You know what I mean?
Where do you see the industry going in the future?
Um, I mean, I think the tech sector will over time, like I think the lines between where the tech sector begin and end and where traditional businesses begin and end is going to start to get blurry, right? Like you have your pure tech companies, like, and that sector is no longer a startup. There's the most valuable companies in the world are in that sector. I think where you're going to see a lot of innovation now is traditional businesses being innovated, like healthcare, like like telcos, like manufacturing, auto, so I think you're going to see more and more startups that are really innovation and disruption, within traditional industries, retail, manufacturing, healthcare, things like that. So, um, the lines between what's a tech company and what's a healthcare company and all, they're going to get more and more blurry. Honestly, everybody's going to be tech enabled.
Tech's going to run everything.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
So thinking back to the previous question about the hard things about hard things, that got me thinking. You said you read different literature for different stages of the company. I'm just curious as to where Symend is in its journey.
We're a growth company now. We're not a venture business anymore. Like we had 45, 50 people. We have 45-ish people at the beginning of the year. We're close to 100 now, or maybe even over. And we're hiring 3, 4 people a week. So we're scaling quite rapidly. We hope to be a multi-billion-dollar business by the end of 2021. So we're at that point where it's not about product market fit anymore. It's about operationalizing processes. It's about not hiring the executives, but the next layer of leadership below the executives. It's not about showing traction. It's about showing scale and being able to handle, not like 20 million a year revenue, but being able to build the organization that can handle 200 million a year in revenue. So that's kind of how we're thinking about the business now, is more around, um, let's stop thinking about this as a startup. Let's think about this as a true enterprise, which is where we want to be in the next 18 months. And the best way to get to a point B is to start acting like it today. And so that's kind of the way we're thinking about our business now.
For you personally, what are you curious about right now?
I'm curious about Calgary, honestly. Like, Calgary, more than any other city that I've ever been to, is a transient city where people came to hustle and people came to work. It's got a very meritocracy, enterprising DNA to its people, and you know, uh, I think oil and gas will always be an important part of this city. Um, but like any other city, like Denver was an pure oil and gas town, and it managed to deliberately diversify its business, and now totally owns SendGrid, and all these big businesses are in that area and in Colorado Springs and stuff like that. We have an office there actually. It's a very diversified economy now, and I think that's important for us as well. And to not be as much of a boom or bust city. I in no way am I saying that oil and gas should not be an important part of the future. What I am saying is that it's not good for any city to be single industry focused. It's very dangerous and very difficult to predict and be stable that way, regardless of the industry. And so making this place, but we have the skill set, we have the quality of life, we have the affordability. Like it's got, we have the amazing healthcare system. Like if you think about what are great schools, like what are the foundations of building an incredible workforce of people contributing not just to tech, but in a lot of different ways. Calgary's got every single ingredient, like enterprising, entrepreneurial people, highly educated, highly technically capable, great healthcare, great education, low housing costs, affordable, like very, like compared to other big cities, very little traffic, um, great infrastructure. Like there's no reason for our city to be in the kind of pain that it is in today. And I think structural changes take time, but I really believe Calgary has the DNA, the ingredients of being one of the coolest cities to live in, period. It already is to me, already, but I think in 10 years, in 20 years, what I hope to see here is a very vibrant and diverse economy. And I really believe it'll happen.
I absolutely agree with you, Hanif. I think with tech companies like yours leading the way, I think we're becoming more of a technology hub, and like you're saying, we have a diversity of skills and all that great stuff. So I think Calgary it's well positioned to become, in my opinion, already the best city in Alberta, but even in Canada. That's great.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, before this whole COVID thing, I used to have to travel like 50% of the time. And it was all over Toronto, Seattle, New York, San Francisco, everywhere, Denver, um, Florida. Like I was all over. And every time I landed in YYC Airport, I breathed more easily. Every time, no matter where I went, it didn't matter. Even on vacations, like if the vacation took more than a week, I was like, I want to go home. Like it's just there's something about being here that just puts my mind at ease. Like like a comfy blanket or something. I don't know. Like I love this city. I love the people here. I love the fact that it's almost like if a Wall Street guy and a redneck had a baby. It's got like the perfect balance between those two things. People who want to hustle and make money and be entrepreneurial, but also a place where your handshake still matters and your reputation and your integrity and it's just I really like the balance we have here in this city, and I think I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Absolutely. I think once we get past this whole pandemic, I think we'll be on our way back up, just with our DNA and that, all the resilience we have in the city.
Exactly.
I look forward to seeing where Calgary goes. A couple more questions here. What's one question that you never get asked that you wish you would be asked?
That's a good one. Normally these questions are pretty good, but you know, I think the one question I don't know how honest I would be about the answer. Honestly, is like, and I'm starting to practice this. It's a new habit of mine. I'm still getting better at it. It's trying to plan the future based on the things that will make us fail, right? Like, you in your mind when you close your eyes, you always have the chess moves that are going to move you from here to where what success looks like, or what the next goal looks like, the next major milestone. But you never do the chess pieces and the moves towards how are you going to lose? What are the moves? What are the things that you could potentially do, and how could the world shift? And what are the things that could, topple our city or topple Symend, or, you know, it's what are the key impediments? What are the key risks? What are the things that, if you don't nail it, you're still exposed. And what are your plans for that? That's probably one of the things that I've started to spend most of my time thinking about. It's not about how I'm going to grow and sell. It's like what could we end up doing, or what could end up happening outside of our control that would would prevent us from getting to where we need, and then how do you plan around that? um you know that's kind of where I want to spend most of my time now, is thinking about those things and protecting our downside. um right now for us, I mean, hiring really good people is obviously one of them. System scalability, cloud, stability of the cloud infrastructure globally. Like there's a lot of different things that keep, made me really, really focus. The biggest one that I think is outside of, like, we can invest in it all day, and we invest heavily in it, and we're going to be one of the Canada's leading technology companies in this area, is security. Um, but still, no matter how how high sci-fi your security stuff is, you got to keep being vigilant at it, because we are living in a more and more digital world. And security and security breaches and security risk is one of those things that, like, unless you're vigilant all the time, it takes only once for you to make a mistake. There's a lot of other things that could go wrong, but you could recover, right? Security failures are the ones where it's like, you know, that's a mistake you can't really afford to make even once. And I think, you know, early startups can't invest as much time into it, but we do, and it's still, I'm always thinking about what I could do to do more.
So, where can listeners connect with you online or Cement?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and obviously, I do. There are a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn. I try to connect to as many people as I can. The other way, we have a full marketing team, and I have a full CEO office with people that support me because of all the different places that I need to project my decision making and my line of sight. And so anyone that reaches out to us on our website as well, there are people that are monitoring that thing every day, and they escalate things that are addressed to me directly. So I would say those are probably the best two ways.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast, Hanif. I usually like to end the podcast with you posing a question to the audience or even a quote or a story.
Um, yeah, I've been talking to my team a lot, and it's funny. It's like all the little things that an inch, like there's my one of my favorite one of my favorite speeches from one of my favorite movies is Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday, where he talks about the inches in life, an inch this way and an inch that way, and that's the difference between winning and losing, and is the difference between greatness and being forgotten. And there's whatever you're trying to innovate, better believe there's 1,000 other people trying to do the same thing. So I truly believe that hard work and hustle and vigilance every moment of every day is what's required to be successful as an entrepreneur. And if anything less than you giving it 100% of yourself is what you're prepared to do, is anything less than 100%, then don't get into entrepreneurship. Uh, it's if you want to choose entrepreneurship as a lifestyle, and you're really passionate about something, then give it everything. Because in our company, when I look back at all the little things that if we just done them even a little differently or a day late, we wouldn't be here. There's a ton of them. So
Mm.
it's and we amalgamated it all, and we're like, oh my god, we were so lucky, but it's not. It was more like we created our own luck by giving it 150% and never taking a day off, and that's kind of what it takes, honestly, in this day and age.
You build luck with hard work.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Well, Hanif, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I'm sure the listeners will get lots of great insight from you, and I look forward to seeing where Symend goes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.